The states that lost seats: New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Illinois, and California. Well done. If Republicans don't regain the House in 2022, frankly, y'all should lose your jobs. We now have census numbers. And what the census numbers show is that Americans are now moving. They are voting with their feet. They're moving from states like New York, like California, and they are going to places that are more purple or red. Why? Well, because it is better to live in places that are purple or red. As a recent expatriate from California to Florida, let me tell you, Florida's better. It is way better. And I'm not the only one, because Florida just picked up a congressional seat thanks to the Census Bureau. Texas picked up a couple of congressional seats thanks to the Census Bureau. And by the way, that was actually sort of an underestimate. I mean, most people thought that Florida was going to pick up at least 2, not just 1. But the states that gained are almost entirely purple or red, and the states that lost are almost entirely blue. The sole exception, I believe, there is probably Ohio, which lost a congressional seat, and that is because the Rust Belt has been moving a lot into the Sun Belt. According to the Washington Post, political power in the United States will continue to shift south this decade, as historically Democratic states that border the Great Lakes give up congressional seats and electoral votes to regions where Republicans currently enjoy a political advantage, according to new data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Texas, Florida, North Carolina. You wonder why your corporate media in New York and L.A., why they despise Texas and Florida, why they are constantly ripping on Texas and Florida? It's because all of the people who earn money in these states and have the ability to move and don't have their heads so far up their own rectums it's coming out their head again, are moving away from New York and Connecticut and New Jersey and California, and they are moving instead to states where they can actually live comfortable, nice, free lives. Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, 3 states that voted twice for President Trump, are set to gain a combined 4 additional seats in Congress in 2023 because of population growth, granting them collectively as many new votes in the Electoral College for the next presidential election as Hawaii has in total. So this does shift some of the Electoral College math. Not only that, it shifts the nature of the House. Most political prognosticators believe that Republicans, because of that reapportionment, basically just gained 3 seats in the House. Well, Democrats are only up by 5 or 6 seats in the House right now. So that means that Republicans are already, just thanks to the Census Bureau, on the verge of retaking the House of Representatives. Now, that changes based on redistricting in a lot of these states. We know that in New York, for example, there are a bunch of Republican seats in New York. New York is going to redistrict, and they're attempting to get rid of a lot of those Republican seats. But the same thing is presumably true in Republican states down south, which again are gaining population. 4 northern states with Democratic governors that President Biden won in 2020, Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York, will each lose a single congressional seat. Ohio will lose 1 seat in Congress. That's the only actual red state that lost a seat, so far as I'm aware. The data released Monday was better for the Democrats than expected. Earlier Census Bureau estimates had suggested congressional gains in Florida and Texas would be even bigger. The margins in certain states that determined the final congressional count were razor thin. New York lost a seat because of a shortfall of only 89 people. So thank you to hero of the Republic, Governor Andrew Cuomo, the greatest of all governors. It turns out that killing your own population, as well as raising taxes, making life basically unlivable in your state, led to the loss of a congressional seat in your state. The release marked the start to a constitutionally mandated effort to redraw congressional districts across the country in advance of the 2022 election, a tangled, litigious process likely to benefit Republican office holders more than Democratic ones next year. Frankly, if Republicans don't regain the House in 2022, given Joe Biden's performance, given the fact that they are the out-of-power party in an off-year election, and given the fact that Republican states are gaining seats in the Census Bureau reapportionment, if they somehow fail to regain the House in 2022, that is an act of extraordinary incompetence. And this is not a secret. I've told as many Republican legislators as I can find, and that's many of them since I recently spoke at a House Republican caucus meeting. I told them, if you guys don't retake the House in 2022, frankly, y'all should lose your jobs, because this is a target-rich environment politically for you. Joe Biden is running up massive debt, massive deficits. He's proposed $10 trillion in spending this year so far. Okay, so you guys, you have a lot of room to run here. All of this is a stark threat to Democratic control of the House, which will rest on a 7-vote margin with 4 outstanding vacancies once newly elected Representative Troy Carter, Democrat of Louisiana, takes office in the coming weeks. The results show that the country grew over the past decade by the second slowest rate in history, owing to an aging population, decreased fertility, and slowing immigration. A slightly lower rate of growth was recorded between 1930 and 1940. So the downturn, thanks to COVID itself, which killed off a lot of people, the fact that people aren't having babies, particularly in urban centers, what this is leading to is a slowing of growth in the United States, which actually is a serious problem for a country that continues to take on debts that there will be no one alive to pay. Right now, the redistricting landscape is of heavy advantage to Republicans. There are many, many states where Republicans control the state legislature, and redistricting is going to happen in those states. That includes places like Ohio, West Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, and Texas. We're still not going to know the partisan effect of the shift because states have to sift through the population data. It's going to be fun to hear from the media how Republican redistricting is super racist and terrible, but Democratic redistricting is wonderful and enjoyable. Republican control of the redistricting process in states like Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, according to the Washington Post, is likely to increase the number of congressional contests where Republicans have a chance of winning. Republicans will control line drawing for 187 congressional seats over the coming year. Democrats control 75 seats. The remaining seats that need to be drawn will be decided by independent commissions or divided governments, according to the Cook Political Report. Mike Thom, battleground director for the National Republican Congressional Committee, said redistricting favors Republicans. It's not going to win back the majority on its own, but certainly it benefits Republicans at this point. All of which demonstrates once again that when you govern your states like garbage, people leave. Okay, this is the theme. The states that actually picked up in total: Oregon 1, Montana 1, Colorado 1, Texas 2, Florida 1, and North Carolina 1. The states that lost seats: New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Illinois, and California. So that population shift is continuing. The Midwest and the Northeast are just losing population. The South and the West are picking up population, except for California, which is losing population because it's governed like absolute garbage. So, well done, blue state governors. You've done an excellent job of driving people from your states, even though the media talk about how wonderful you are. It turns out that the people who live under you don't feel the same way, which is why so many people have been leaving and taking their votes and taking their congressional seats and taking their cash and moving to states that are not seeking to destroy their liberty. Again, there's a great hilarity to the fact that New York lost a House seat because it came up 89 people short on the census. My favorite part of that, by the way, is that members of the New York delegation were saying, well, if we just kept recounting, we'd certainly find 89 more people. Weird, because I was informed that if you did that with regard to votes, that was stealing the election. But if you do it with regard to Census Bureau, then I guess that's good. You just keep recounting until you get exactly what you want. Never forget, guys, it's all about cynical power grabs. Who's got two thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?